Welcome back. Are you ready for the conclusion of the Hollow Needle? This I did not see coming. This has managed to twist even at the very, very end. So I'm so excited for you guys to enjoy this and excited for you to check out the new book that we're going to be starting here next week. So make sure you tune in for that. It's going to be awesome. And don't forget, I give away free audiobooks all the time. That's right, all you have to do is go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com and request a free audiobook. We have dozens and dozens of books that we've done over the years. We're coming up on 500 episodes here soon, folks, so there's a lot of audiobook goodness to be enjoyed, but all you have to do is ask. So go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, you can request a free audiobook, and I will gladly send you anything from our Another World Audiobooks library, which you can check out on the website as well. So thanks to our patrons for supporting the show. If you want to become a patron, make sure to also go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. You also get free audiobooks if you do that, as well as some other perks, so make sure to check that out. Early episodes, that's a big deal, is getting early episodes, so make sure to check that out. And now, without further ado, I give you the conclusion of the Hollow Needle. What happened was so quick that he knew of it, so to speak, only by the result. He saw Lupin bob down and run along the wall, skimming the door right under the weapon which Ganimard was vainly brandishing. And he felt himself suddenly flung to the ground, picked up the next moment, and lifted by an invincible force. Lupin held him in the air, like a living shield, behind which he hid himself. 10 to 1 that I escape, Ganimard! Lupin, you see, has never quite exhausted his resources. He had taken a couple of brisk steps backward to the triptych. Holding Boutelet with one hand flat against his chest, with the other he cleared the passage and closed the little door behind them. A steep staircase appeared before his eyes. "Come along," said Lupin, pushing Boutelet before him. "The land forces are beaten. Let us turn our attention to the French fleet. After Waterloo, Trafalgar. You're having some fun for your money, eh, my lad? Oh, how good! Listen to them knocking on the triptych now. It's too late, my children, but hurry along, Boutelet." The staircase, dug out in the wall of the Needle, dug in its very crust, turned round and round the pyramid, encircling it like the spiral of a toboggan slide. Each hurrying the other, they clattered down the treads, taking 2 or 3 at a bound. Here and there a ray of light trickled through a fissure, and Boutelet carried away the vision of the fish smacks hovering a few dozen fathoms off, and of the black torpedo boat. They went down and down, Isidore in silence, Lupin still bubbling over with merriment. I should like to know what Ganimard is doing. Is he tumbling down the other staircases to bar the entrance to the tunnel against me? No, he's not such a fool as that. He must have left 4 men there, and 4 men are sufficient. He stopped. Listen, they're shouting up above. That's it, they've opened the door and are calling to their fleet. Why, look, the men are busy on board the smacks. They're exchanging signals. The torpedo boat is moving. Dear old torpedo boat. I know you. You're from the Havre. Guns cruise to the guns. Hello, there's the commander. How are you, Duguay-Tuan? He put his arm through a cleft and waved his handkerchief. Then he continued his way down the stairs. The enemy's fleet have set all sail, he said. We shall be boarded before we know where we are. Heavens, what fun! They heard the sound of voices below them. They were just then approaching the level of the sea, and they emerged almost at once into a large cave into which 2 lanterns were moving about in the dark. A woman's figure appeared and threw itself on Lupin's neck. "Quick, quick! I was so nervous about you. What have you been doing? But you're not alone." Lupin reassured her. "It's our friend Boutelet. Just think, Boutelet had the tact. But I'll talk about that later. There's no time now. Charolais, are you there? That's right. And the boat?" "The boat's ready, sir," Charolais replied. "Fire away," said Lupin. In a moment, the noise of a motor crackled, and Boutelet, whose eyes were gradually becoming used to the gloom, ended by perceiving that they were on a sort of quay at the edge of the water, and that a boat was floating before them. "A motorboat," said Lupin, completing Boutelet's observations. "This knocks you all of a heap, eh, Isidore, old chap? You don't understand. Still, you have only to think. As the water before your eyes is no other than the water of the sea, which filters into this excavation each high tide. The result is that I have a safe little private roadstead all to myself." "But it's closed," Boutelet protested. "No one can get in or out." "Yes, I can," said Boutelet. and I'm going to prove it to you." He began by handing Raymond in. Then he came back to fetch Beaudelet. The lad hesitated. "Are you afraid?" asked Lupin.
"What of?"
"Of being sunk by the torpedo boat."
"No."
"Then you're considering whether it's not your duty to stay with Ganimard, law and order, society and morality, instead of going off with Lupin, shame, infamy and disgrace."
"Exactly."
"Unfortunately, my boy, you have no choice. For the moment, they must believe the two of us dead, and leave me the peace to which a prospective honest man is entitled. Later on, when I have given you your liberty, you can talk as much as you please. I shall have nothing more to fear." By the way in which Lupin clutched his arm, Beaudelet felt that all resistance was useless. Besides, why resist? Had he not discovered and handed over the Hollow Needle? What did he care about the rest? Had he not the right to humour the irresistible sympathy with which, in spite of everything, this man inspired him? The feeling was so clear in him that he was half inclined to say to Lupin,
"Look here, you're running a more serious danger. Holmlock Shears is on your track."
"Come along," said Lupin, before Isidore had made up his mind to speak. He obeyed, and let Lupin lead him to the boat, the shape of which struck him as peculiar, and its appearance quite unexpected. Once on deck, they went down a little steep staircase, or rather a ladder hooked on to a trap-door which closed above their heads. At the foot of the ladder, brightly lit by a lamp, was a very small saloon, where Raymond was waiting for them, and where the three had just room to sit down. Lupin took the mouthpiece of a speaking tube from a hook, and gave the order. "Let her go, Charlet." Isidore had the unpleasant sensation which one feels when going down in a lift. The sensation of ground vanishing beneath you, the impression of emptiness, space. This time it was the water retreating. The space opened out slowly. "We're sinking, eh?" grinned Lupin. "Don't be afraid. We've only to pass from the upper cave where we were to another little cave situated right at the bottom and half open to the sea, which can be entered at low tide. All the shellfish catchers know it. 10 seconds wait. We're going through the passage, and it's very narrow, just the size of the submarine."
"But,"
asked Beaudelet,
"how is it that the fishermen who enter the lower cave don't know that it's open at the top, and that it communicates with another, from which a staircase starts and runs through the Needle? The facts are at the disposal of the first comer."
"Wrong, Beaudelet. The top of the little public cave is closed at low tide by a movable platform, painted the colour of the rock, which the sea, when it rises, shifts and carries up with it, and when it goes down, fastens firmly over the little cave. That is why I am able to pass at high tide. A clever notion, what? It's an idea of my own. True, neither Caesar nor Louis XIV, nor, in short, any of my distinguished predecessors could have had it, because they did not possess submarines. They were satisfied with the staircase, which they ran all the way down to the little bottom cave. I did away with the last treads of the staircase, and invented the trick of the movable ceiling. It's a present I'm making to France. Raymond, my love, put out the lamp beside you. We shan't want it now. On the contrary." A pale light, which seemed to be of the same colour as the water, met them as they left the cave, and made its way into the cabin through the 2 portholes, and through a thick glass skylight that projected over the planking of the deck, and allowed the passengers to inspect the upper layers of the sea. And suddenly a shadow glided over their heads. The attack is about to take place. The fleet is investing the Needle. But hollow as the Needle is, I don't see how they propose to enter it. He took up the speaking tube. "Don't leave the bottom, Charlet. Where are we going? Why, I told you, to Port Lupin. And at full speed, do you hear? We want water to land by. There's a lady with us." They skimmed over the rocky bed. The seaweed stood up on end like heavy, dark vegetation, and the deep currents made it wave gracefully, stretching and billowing like floating hair. Another shadow, a longer one. "That's the torpedo boat," said Lupin. "We shall hear the roar of the guns presently. What will Digwetuan do? Bombard the Needle? Think of what we're missing, Beaudelet, by not being present at the meeting of Digwetuan and Ganimard, the junction of the land and naval forces. Hi, Charolais, don't go to sleep, my man." They were moving very fast for all that. The rocks had been succeeded by sandfields, and then, almost at once, they saw more rocks, which marked the eastern extremity of Etretat, the Port d'Amont. Fish fled at their approach. One of them, bolder than the rest, fastened on to the porthole and looked at the occupants of the saloon with its great, fixed, staring eyes. "That's better," cried Lupin. "We're going now. What do you think of my cockle shell, Beautrelet? Not so bad, is she? Do you remember the story of the Seven of Hearts? The wretched end of Lecomte, the engineer, and how, after punishing his murderers, I presented the state with his papers and his plans for the construction of a new submarine, one more gift to France? Well, among the plans, I kept those of a submersible motorboat, and that is how you come to have the honor of sailing in my company." He called up to Charlet. "Take us up, Charlet. There's no danger now." They shot up to the surface, and the glass skylight emerged above the water. They were a mile from the coast, out of sight therefore, and Beautrelet was now able to realize more fully at what a headlong pace they were travelling. First Fécamp passed before them, then all the Norman seaside places, Saint-Pierre, De Petit, Dalle, Voulet, Saint-Valery, Voila, Quiberville. Lupin kept on jesting, and Isidore never wearied of watching and listening to him, amazed as he was at the man's spirits, at his gaiety, his mischievous ways, his careless chaff, his delight in life. He also noticed Raymond. The young woman sat silent, nestling up against the man she loved. She had taken his hands between her own, and kept on raising her eyes to him. And Beautrelet constantly observed that her hands were twitching, and that the wistful sadness of her eyes increased. And each time it was like a dumb and sorrowful reply to Lupin's sallies. One would have thought that his frivolous words, his sarcastic outlook on life, caused her physical pain.
"Hush," she whispered. "It's defying destiny to laugh. So many misfortunes can still reach us."
Opposite Dieppe, they had to dive lest they should be seen by the fishing craft, and 20 minutes later they shot an angle toward the coast, and the boat entered a little submarine harbour, formed by a regular gap between the rocks, drew up beside a jetty, and rose gently to the surface. Lupin announced, "Port Lupin." The spot, situated at 16 miles from Dieppe and 12 from the Triport, and protected, moreover, by the 2 landslips of cliff, was absolutely deserted. A fine sand carpeted the rounded slope of the tiny beach. "Jump on shore, Beautrelet. Raymond, give me your hand. You, Charlet, go back to the Needle, see what happens between Ganimard and Duguay-Trouin, and come back and tell me at the end of the day. The thing interests me tremendously." Beautrelet asked himself with a certain curiosity how they were going to get out of this hemmed-in creek, which was called Port Lupin, when, at the foot of the cliff, he saw the uprights of an iron ladder. "Isidore," said Lupin, "if you knew your geography and your history, you would know that we are at the bottom of the gorge of Parfonval, in the parish of Biville. More than a century ago, on the night of the 23rd of August, 1803, Georges Cadoudal and 6 accomplices, who had landed in France with the intention of kidnapping the first consul, Bonaparte, scrambled up to the top by the road which I will show you. Since then, this road has been demolished by landslips, but Louis Valmier, better known by the name of Arsene Lupin, had it restored at his own expense, and bought the farm of the Nulivit, where the conspirators spent the first night, and where, retired from business and withdrawing from the affairs of this world, he means to lead the life of a respectable country squire, with his wife and his mother by his side. The gentleman burglar is dead. Long live the gentleman farmer!" After the ladder came a sort of gully, an abrupt ravine hollowed out, apparently by the rains, at the end of which they laid hold of a makeshift staircase, furnished with a handrail. As Lupin explained, this handrail had been placed where it was in the stead of the Estam perch, a long rope fastened to stakes, by which the people of the country, in the old days, used to help themselves down when going to the beach. After a painful climb of half an hour, they emerged on the table-land, not far from one of those little cabins, dug out of the soil itself, which serve as shelters for the excisemen. And as it happened, 2 minutes later, at a turn in the path, one of these custom-house officials appeared. He drew himself up and saluted. Lupin asked, "Any news, Gomel?" "No, governor." "You've met no one at all suspicious-looking?" "No, governor. Only—"
What?
My wife, who does dressmaking at the Newlywed.
Yes, I know, Césarine. My mother spoke of her. Well?
It seems a sailor was prowling about the village this morning.
What sort of face had he?
Not a natural face, a sort of Englishman's face.
Ah, said Lupin, in a tone preoccupied. And you have given Césarine orders?
To keep her eyes open, yes, Governor.
Very well. Keep a lookout for Charolais' return in 2 or 3 hours from now. If there's anything, I shall be at the farm. He walked on and said to Beaudelet, This makes me uneasy. Is it Shears? If it's he, in his present state of exasperation, I have everything to fear. He hesitated a moment. I wonder if we hadn't better turn back. Yes, I have a nasty presentiment of evil. Gently undulating plains stretched before them as far as the eye could see. A little to the left, a series of handsome avenues of trees led to the farm of the Newlywed, the buildings of which were now in view. It was the retreat which he had prepared, the haven of rest which he had promised Raymond. Was he, for the sake of an absurd idea, to renounce happiness at the very moment when it seemed within his reach? He took Isidore by the arm, calling his attention to Raymond, who was walking in front of them. Look at her. When she walks, her figure has a little swing at the waist which I cannot see without quivering, but everything in her gives me that thrill of emotion and love. Her movements and her repose, her silence and the sound of her voice. I tell you, the mere fact that I am walking in the track of her footsteps makes me feel in the 7th heaven. Ah, Beaudelet, will she ever forget that I was once Lupin? Shall I ever be able to wipe out from her memory the past which she loathes and detests? He mastered himself, and with obstinate assurance, She will forget, he declared. She will forget, because I have made every sacrifice for her sake. I have sacrificed the inviolable sanctuary of the Hollow Needle. I have sacrificed my treasures, my power, my pride. I will sacrifice everything. I don't want to be anything more but just a man in love, and an honest man, because she can only love an honest man. After all, why should I not be honest? It is no more degrading than anything else. The quip escaped him, so to speak, unawares. His voice remained serious and free of all chafe, and he muttered with restrained violence, Ah, Beaudelet, you see, of all the unbridled joys which I have tasted in my adventurous life, there is not one that equals the joy with which her look fills me when she is pleased with me. I feel quite weak then, and I should like to cry. Was he crying? Beaudelet had an intuition that his eyes were wet with tears. Tears in Lupin's eyes. Tears of love. They were nearing an old gate that served as an entrance to the farm. Lupin stopped for a moment and stammered, Why am I afraid? I feel a sort of weight on my chest. Is the adventure of the Hollow Needle not over? Has destiny not accepted the issue which I selected? Raymond turned round, looking very anxious. Here comes Césarine. She's running. The exciseman's wife was hurrying from the farm as fast as she could. Lupin rushed up to her. What is it? What has happened? Speak! Choking, quite out of breath, Césarine stuttered. A man! I saw a man this morning. A man! I saw a man in the sitting room. The Englishman of this morning? Yes, but in a different disguise. Did he see you? No, he saw your mother. Mademoiselle Valmires caught him as he was just going away. Well? He told her that he was looking for Louis Valmires, that he was a friend of yours. Then? The madame said that her son had gone abroad for years. And he went away? No, he made signs through the window that overlooks the plain, as if he were calling to someone. Lupin seemed to hesitate. A loud cry tore the air. Raymond moaned. It's your mother, I recognize. He flung himself upon her, and dragging her away in a burst of fierce passion. Come, let us fly, you first. But suddenly he stopped, distraught, overcome. No, I can't do it. It's too awful. Forgive me, Raymond, that poor woman down there. Stay here, Beaudelet, don't leave her. He darted along the slope that surrounds the farm, turned and followed it at a run, till he came to the gate that opens on the plain.
Raymond, whom Beaudelet had been unable to hold back, arrived almost as soon as he did, and Beaudelet, hiding behind the trees, saw in the lonely walk that led from the farm to the gate 3 men, one of whom, the tallest, went ahead, while the 2 others were holding by the arms a woman who tried to resist, and who uttered moans of pain. The daylight was beginning to fade. Nevertheless, Beaudelet recognized Holmlock Shears. The woman seemed of a certain age. Her livid features were set in a frame of white hair. They all 4 came up. They reached the gate. Shears opened one of the folding leaves. Then Lupin strode forward and stood in front of him. The encounter appeared all the more terrible inasmuch as it was silent, almost solemn. For long moments the 2 enemies took each other's measure with their eyes. An equal hatred distorted the features of both of them. Neither moved. Then Lupin spoke, in a voice of terrifying calmness. "Tell your men to leave that woman alone." No. It was as though both of them feared to engage in the supreme struggle, as though both were collecting all their strength. And there were no words wasted this time, no insults, no bantering challenges. Silence, a deathlike silence. Mad with anguish, Raymond awaited the issue of the duel. Beaudelet had caught her arms and was holding her motionless. After a second, Lupin repeated, "Order your men to leave that woman alone." "No," Lupin said. "Listen, Shears." But he interrupted himself, realizing the silliness of the words. In the face of that colossus of pride and willpower which called itself Holmlock Shears, of what use were threats? Resolved upon the worst, suddenly he put his hand to his jacket pocket. The Englishman anticipated his movement, and, leaping upon his prisoner, thrust the barrel of his revolver within 2 inches of her temple. "If you stir a limb, I fire." At the same time, his 2 satellites drew their weapons and aimed them at Lupin. Lupin drew himself up, stifled the rage within him, and, coolly, with his hands in his pockets and his breast exposed to the enemy, began once more. "Shears, for the 3rd time, let that woman be." The Englishman sneered. "I have no right to touch her, I suppose. Come, enough of this humbug. Your name isn't Valmiera's any more than it's Lupin. You stole the name, just as you stole the name of Chamalace. And the woman whom you pass off as your mother is Victoire, your old accomplice, the one who brought you up." Shears made a mistake. Carried away by his longing for revenge, he glanced across at Raymond, whom these revelations filled with horror. Lupin took advantage of his imprudence. With a sudden movement, he fired. "Damnation!" bellowed Shears, whose arm, pierced by a bullet, fell to his side, and, addressing his men, "Shoot, you 2! Shoot him down!" But already Lupin was upon them, and not 2 seconds had elapsed before the one on the right was sprawling on the ground, with his chest smashed, while the other, with his jaw broken, fell back against the gate. "Hurry up, Victoire! Tie them down! And now, Mr. Englishman, it's you and I." He ducked with an oath. "Ah, you scoundrel!" Shears had picked up his revolver with his left hand and was taking aim at him. A shot, a cry of distress. Raymond had flung herself between the 2 men, facing the Englishman. She staggered back, brought her hand to her neck, drew herself up, spun round on her heels, and fell at Lupin's feet. "Raymond! Raymond!" He threw himself upon her, took her in his arms, and pressed her to him. "Dead," he said. There was a moment of stupefaction. Shears seemed confounded by his own act. Victoire stammered. "My poor boy! My poor boy!" Beaudelet went up to the young woman and stooped to examine her. Lupin repeated, "Dead. Dead." He said it in a reflective tone, as though he did not yet understand. But his face became hollow, suddenly transformed, ravaged by grief. And then he was seized with a sort of madness, made senseless gestures, wrung his hands, stamped his feet, like a child that suffers more than it is able to bear. "You villain!" he cried, suddenly, in an access of hatred. And, flinging Shears back with a formidable blow, he took him by the throat and dug his twitching fingers into his flesh. The Englishman gasped without even struggling.
My boy,
said Victoire in a voice of entreaty. Beaudelet ran up, but Lupin had already let go and stood sobbing beside his enemy, stretched upon the ground. Oh, pitiful sight! Beaudelet never forgot its tragic horror. He who knew all Lupin's love for Raymond, and all that the great adventurer had sacrificed of his own being to bring a smile to the face of his well-beloved. Night began to cover the field of battle with a shroud of darkness. The 3 Englishmen lay bound and gagged in the tall grass. Distant songs broke the vast silence of the plain. It was the farmhands returning from their work. Lupin drew himself up. He listened to the monotonous voices. Then he glanced at the happy homestead of the New Villette, where he had hoped to live peacefully with Raymond. Then he looked at her, the poor, loving victim, whom love had killed, and who, all white, was sleeping with her last, eternal sleep. The men were coming nearer, however. Then Lupin bent down, took the dead woman in his powerful arms, lifted the corpse with a single effort, and, bent in two, stretched it across his back. "Let us go, Victoire."
"Let us go, dear."
"Goodbye, Beaudelet," he said. And, bearing his precious and awful burden, followed by his old servant, silent and fierce, he turned toward the sea and plunged into the darkness of the night. The end. Whoa, that was crazy. Oh my goodness. Wow, I think of all of the Arsene Lupin books, this is probably my favorite. Great twist there at the end, and another great twist there at the end. My goodness, these books have been so much fun to do, and I hope you've enjoyed them. If you haven't listened to books 1 and 2 in the Arsene Lupin series, you need to do that, and you can do that by going to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. You can purchase the book if you want to support the podcast that way, or if you want to just sign up, you can get one of those books for free, or if you become a patron, there's different tiers of being a patron, and the highest tier, you actually get the entire Another World Audiobooks library for free. You get the full audiobook, so no interruptions, no intros, no outros, anything like that, no ads. You just get the entire library, which is pretty cool, So if you guys want to check that out, again, that's anotherworldaudiobooks.com. So make sure to stay tuned for next week. Like I said, we're going to be jumping into a brand new book, and I think you're going to love it. So looking forward to that. Thanks, guys, for listening and supporting the podcast by sharing the podcast. That is the best way to spread the word and help keep us on the air, so to speak, or on your phone, I guess. Anyway, thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we'll catch you next week.